Good morning and the warmest of welcomes to you. It is such a pleasure to be with you here in person for this year's Menslink Big Breakfast. I'm Genevieve Jacobs, Group Editor for Orygen Media. We are so proud as a Canberra business and as the media business with the biggest reach across our region to partner with Menslink and all the outstanding work it does in this community. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and commit myself to ongoing acts of reconciliation. Canberra always comes together in the most magnificent way for Menslink, so I do particularly want to welcome some special guests this morning. Senator the Honourable Katie Gallagher, Ministers Rachel Stephen-Smith, Shane Rattenbury, Emma Davidson and Rebecca Vassarotti, ACT Opposition Leader Elizabeth Lee, MLAs Jonathan Davis, Dr Marisa Patterson, Peter Kane, Mark Parton and Ed Cox, the ACT's Chief Police Officer Neil Gawn, Corrective Services Commissioner Ray Johnson, Christy Windier, who is the Coordinator General for Family Safety, and Youth Coalition CEO Dr Justin Barker, and of course our special guest Dr Zach Seidler, of whom more later. It is tremendously heartwarming to know that so many people in this city do care deeply about Menslink and the work it does for young blokes who are truly at risk. And many of us are here this morning in a professional capacity. Many of us have careers in which all sorts of exciting things go on, but many of us are also parents. Many of us also know what it's like to be desperately worried about someone in our family. I say this as a mother of four, including 3 young men. They're all now, fingers crossed, past the trickiest bit of raising them into manhood safely. But I always look at Menslink as a mother first rather than a journalist. And I think lots of you, even with all the benefits of your professional wisdom, would do the same. Menslink is of course a very different organisation from many others that are more broadly based. It's so specifically aimed at young men and boys and the male identified, and it's the only organisation in Canberra with that specific focus. That means that Menslink has very specific skills. They know how to offer spaces, they know how to create the opportunities that work best for young blokes to share, to work on their challenges, and they know how to make it work over a really long term for those who may leave and then need to come back. There is of course a connection with family and domestic violence. Menslink works quietly, productively, with both perpetrators and victims, and at the prevention end of that destructive cycle. It picks up the potential start of those problems and works to reorient the behaviour, because prevention is always better than cure. And Menslink is importantly for every young bloke who's struggling. It's not just the broken or naughty kids who need counselling and mentoring or the Menslink in Schools program. It's everyone. And really, who among us could say that the path had been entirely smooth in any of our families? Those skills are being recognised more and more widely. In recent times, the likes of the Australian Men's Health Forum, Jesuit Social Services, the Men's Project team from Victoria have complimented Menslink on the work, because there is apparently nothing much like this anywhere else except here in the ACT. And we know how great that need is here in the ACT, so just ponder that. This outstanding work with proven results over a 20-year course is unique. The flow-on effect, the capacity to change the course of young lives, is something that we in this community can all be immensely proud of, because this community, us here in Canberra, are actively doing something deeply worthwhile. We are investing in our future. I'd like to now introduce the Chair of the Menslink Board, Michael Battinelli.
Good morning, and thank you for those kind words in respect of Menslink. Thurua Nuguna, Dura Nulua, Yangu, Nalawiri, Dunimanyin, Nulwari, Durawari, Nagingara Dindi, Wangarili Jinyin. This is Ngunnawal country. Today we are gathering on Ngunnawal country. We always respect elders, female and male. And we acknowledge the custodians of this country, from the past, the present and those we nurture into the future. I also acknowledge and welcome people of First Nations culture and heritage who are here with us today. As Chair, it's my privilege to welcome guests to the 2022 Menslink Business Breakfast, having held this key event in an online capacity in the past 2 years. Welcome to our sponsors and friends from the ACT Government. In fact, we've got 10 MLAs from Government today, which is absolutely fabulous, so thank you to all of you. Welcome to our ACT business and region sector, our community of volunteers and members, and many have shared an interest in the wellbeing of young people. This morning we hear from Dr. Seidler. Hi, Zach. From the Movember organisation. From humble beginnings in Australia back in 2003, the Movember movement has grown to be a truly global one, challenging the status quo, shaking up men's health research and transforming the way health services reach and support men. While the Menslink focus is on supporting health and wellbeing for young men 10 to 25 years, I spoke with Dr. Seidler last night and I can assure you he has a vital message to share with men of all ages. Menslink is built on the partnership and generosity of Canberrans, our principal partners and our sponsors. Their enduring support has endured the growth of Menslink services and programs, reaching our 20-year milestone, in case you missed it behind me, this year. We must acknowledge the ACT Government for their sustained support from 2002. We've got 1 year on Movember, but not quite as big. Trusting the commitment of a group of Canberrans to steward the development of wellbeing-focused programs for young men and boys. And one of those men is here today, Jim Rice, who is still on our board, and Jim will tell you the full story. We also thank the following principal sponsors for many continuous years of support: ACT Policing, Capital Chemist, Geocon, Icon Water, Lennox Volkswagen, Snow Foundation, Southern Plumbing Plus, the Canberra Raiders and Win Television, who are very visible in promoting the good messages around young men and role models. While we all know the impact of COVID-19 to business, all principal sponsors have stood by Menslink and continued their support throughout the period. And to our growing community of major sponsors who also feature on the Menslink website, and all here this morning, thank you for your support. There are many new faces here this morning too, so again, I hope that you become very much part of the tradition and the Menslink effort. Because of this sustained community support, Menslink is a story of people and on-the-ground service and programs. I recognise the board members for their skilled and unwavering contribution, with apologies this morning from Craig Allen, you may know from the ABC, and of course Justine Saunders, former Chief Police Officer, has a very busy role at the moment and she's unable to get here. But we do have the likes of our board members, Frank Lopalato, Golna Nakoe, Jim Rice, Daniel Oyston, Katie Balmax, Bruce Paps, all enthusiastically here and connecting with you today. And talking about on the ground, the 2022 Menslink Great Walk is in its second year again. It's in the first week of November. It's 142 kilometres over 5 days, and we have 35 committed. I'm not sure what committed means here, but anyway, are on the team to raise funds and promote the Menslink message to our community. Fellow walkers, please put up your hand, as this is a terrific effort in your demanding lives. This bit of a former principal. Put your hand up. Yeah, there's quite a few here, so good on you. But of course, the dedicated staff at Menslink are a mighty crew. Many are here this morning, of course, meeting and greeting. Along with many service professions in particular, the recent years have strengthened their resolve in working as a team to maintain continuous access to support for young men. What they do on the ground makes a difference in so many ways. And talking about some of the stories, you've got some sheets on your tables. They're alternate sheets. They tell some of the vignettes, some of the short stories that have significant impact, but quite a diversity of situations and contexts that we deal with as an organisation. But to change lives for the good. A big shout out this morning to the volunteer brigade, including the crew of lads from St Edmund's College. I greeted them this morning and thanking them for their support today. But also we have about 80 mentors, 80 male mentors across Canberra who provide thousands of hours of mentor support for young men. Fortunately, mentor program activities are back to a normality now, and we are actively recruiting mentors, as you can see by the promotions on the table. And encourage yourself, perhaps, if it's in the context of your life at the moment, or indeed encourage a friend to have a look at signing up as a mentor. If not this year, not next year, maybe the year after, but the opportunity is ongoing. There are 2 tables, in fact, here of mentors. Could they put their hands up, please? Where are the mentors? Are there? Oh, here we are, over there. So if you want to have a chat to a mentor, top or tail of the room, we've got quite a few here. So again, thank you very much for your work. And if we could just put our hands together for them, because they do an amazing amount of work. Thank you. Promise to be brief, and I shall be. So here I share 2 powerful messages via a local school leader and another from an Australian of the Year. From the school leader at St Edmund's College, she said, "It's easier to build strong children than repair broken men." Responding to the impact of the Menslink Pride program that has had on many young people at the college, she says, "The raw and real personalities that are shared by the presenters allow students to connect and engage in a way that cannot be achieved when they are plugged into a device trying to access information on personal topics. We are ever so appreciative of this service that helps improve the mental health and well-being of our boys." And Rosie Batty, who spoke here in 2016, she also, in the time that she was in Canberra, conducting a workshop for ACT principals. And at the close of the engaging workshop, she was asked the question, "What is the one thing we need to do in schools to help young boys?" Her one request was that we commit to shift the culture of negative male behaviour to one that is positive, forgiving, sharing and resilient. To the mums, sisters and females in the lives of the young men of Canberra, we acknowledge your love, advocacy and enduring support. While Menslink's core purpose aligns with supporting young men, the importance of females in their lives is significant, noting that 80% of referred clients live in single mum households. Finally, on behalf of the many young men and boys who benefit from your government, community and philanthropic support here this morning, I thank you, because together we will continue to be here for them. Our CEO, Martin Fisk, is not here this morning, but he's on many months of personal and long service leave, but he did kindly put together a little video message because he just couldn't miss out. But as a prelude to something even bigger, don't tell him I said that, but as a prelude to meeting our General Manager and Acting CEO, Penny Burns, who will share with you her insight into the importance of Menslink in our community. Over to you, Martin and Penny, and thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this, our 2022 Menslink Business Breakfast. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person today because I'm on long service leave. But this year is a very important year. It is our 20th year of continuous service to young guys in our Canberra region and of course their families, their schools, the broader community. And we wanted to thank you for being here and for all of your support that you give us and on our behalf, the young fellas in the community. Now, while you're watching this video, I'll be cross-country skiing on the Bogong High Plains down in Victoria, because that's my passion. And one of the things that we try and teach young fellas is that if they can find their passion and they can do it in a broader community with real, positive, strong relationships, then that will build their resilience to help them get through any tough time in their life. And that's what Menslink's all about, helping build the resilience of our young fellas, helping them find their passion and grow into healthy, responsible, adult men that we can all be proud of. One of the things I wanted to share with you in this, our 20th year, is that over the years, we have directly supported more than 5,000 young fellas through mentoring and counselling support. We have given mental fitness and positive behaviour presentations to tens of thousands of young fellas, reaching a whole generation of Canberra young men who are going to build an even better city than the one we currently live in. Thank you, Canberra, for the last 20 years, and I look forward to working with you to build the next 20 years of a stronger, more resilient, more vibrant Canberra community. Thank you.
Good morning. Lovely to see you all here in person and meet some of you for the first time. From the outset, please know that Menslink works with the majority of male clients or those who identify as male, but we also have non-binary and transgender clients choosing our service. For this speech, I'll use the terms men, young guys, young fellas interchangeably and mean no disrespect to any of our clients or you, the audience. It's not our intent, but if you happen to be triggered by comments or examples in any presentation, we have counsellors in the room who you may wish to speak with before you leave today. Finally, meet our team. This is a picture of our amazing Menslink team in front of the most beautiful spring blossom in our school office courtyard. Keep these ordinary yet extraordinary and slightly crazy, which I love, people in your minds when you listen whilst I share about what this team delivers for your communities. So I'm super grateful that Martin made his brief appearance and covered the facts and figures of Menslink. This leaves me to do what I'm most comfortable with, which is storytell. Some years ago, I began the most difficult journey I had ever endured. I realised very quickly that if I was to make it through this journey, I would need significant help. I began reaching out to mental health practitioners in the hope of finding someone who would be able to assist me. I had previously sought help from both psychologists and counsellors, but had really struggled to connect with them. Even those I managed to connect with were hard to keep regular appointments with. I was put onto Menslink from a dear friend. I had tried to apply to a couple of similar organisations, but had been rejected due to my specific needs. Within less than a day of reaching out, Menslink made contact and quickly organised for me to see a counsellor. Where some psychologists had taken me on as a new client, Menslink came across as wanting to take me on as an actual person they could help to achieve betterment. I've used my Menslink counsellor on and off for the past 2 years. He has consistently changed my unhelpful thought patterns and has always taken a very holistic and individual approach to therapy. Although I'm sure my needs have brought some significant struggles to my counsellor, he has always presented as extremely professional and understanding. He was cautious around some issues early on in our journey, but now has learnt my limits. He asks me very direct questions and is able to discuss very personal matters with me, which is testament to his ability to look at me as the individual person and do what's best for me and not just what the textbook says he should do. Then there's Ronnie, who I will name, Menslink's intake officer, the warm smile at the front desk and someone I appreciate deeply. She's so incredibly welcoming, down to earth and willing to help, and it again comes from a place of genuine care and not just wanting return business. I have full faith that Menslink has helped and will continue to help a great number of vulnerable people in our community. Their work has kept families together, boys in school, and men alive. I am so incredibly grateful for having had access to Menslink. Some letter. This young man has been through some tough times, and when he wrote, sadly we couldn't take it at face value initially, as he offered 2 letters to 2 separate staff, which triggered initial concerns around his motivation for writing to us. Was it a sign of dire thoughts or plans? But quickly checking in with his counsellor, obviously, and whilst maintaining his privacy, we were reassured that the letter was purely from a place of gratefulness for how important Menslink had been for him. I shared this letter as it says much of what I also want to iterate, but importantly, it's from a client's perspective. I've come to realise that I'm a storyteller. It's how I learn best throughout my life, and it's how best I share my passion. It was my grandmother who spent hours teaching me a vigour for life, and I've naturally surrounded myself with people who've shown me genuine interest and care. Different people for different aspects of life and who I pulled in at different times. All happening organically as I gradually learned to accept and embrace their quiet respect for me and their support for my journey. I was able to trust that they would always be there to help me with my life's challenging speed bumps. Yet it was in my most recent 15 years in Papua New Guinea, surrounded by communities who use storytelling and everyday communication as the main method of exploring and sharing life's power, that actually helped me understand what I'd inadvertently grown up with and unknowingly been offering to others. As a mum of 2 teenage boys, hearing the stories of elders in these Indigenous communities holding their boys throughout their early life journey made such sense to me. Young boys learning from elders' wisdom, experiences and knowledge. I witnessed much mutual respect despite it not always being an easy journey for the young fella. Despite being female, I've adopted many aspects of the approach I witnessed in PNG within my own parenting style to be a more boy-relevant mum. It's all these thematic similarities I found in the services and approach offered by Menslink to the young guys that makes working at Menslink such a lovely fit with my value set. It's an organisation I've quickly become passionate about. So now I too want you to really know Menslink and also become passionate about our important contribution to your community. Just knowing our name isn't enough. Mike mentioned, and on your tables is that very wordy, and sorry, that's my storytelling bent again, flyer that shares the examples of the power and impact of Menslink and our need for mentors. So please, as Mike suggested, take a few minutes over the next week, not while Zach's talking, to have a read and share it with someone who isn't here today so that they also start to better understand us. It's the authenticity of the Menslink team and their commitment to young fellas we support that resonates most with me. Accepting these young men for who they are and supporting them as they navigate their difficult life speed bumps, rumble bumps, judder bumps, depends where you come from in the world, just like the speed bumps that I've faced in my life or maybe you've faced in yours. These life bumps are different for each young fella, but no matter what, the Menslink team are always there, irrespective of what it takes, and committed to supporting the young guy through his difficult time. The team live our Menslink values in all that we do, and it's clearly reflected in the way I see young men and their families engaging with us, and I know this as we get letters and feedback, as I initially shared with you. Of the many young men Menslink supports annually, I want to point out how broadly accepted and trusted our service offerings are, specifically to some of the smaller cohorts within the Menslink community. Being a regional immigration city, there are many culturally and linguistically diverse families setting up home and embracing community. Menslink actively works in this space with nearly 14% of our clients from such backgrounds. Additionally, we have men from First Nation families who have lived on their land in Canberra for generations and represent annually around 9% of our clients. And I'm highlighting these statistics as I know this information is important for many of you. But please know that when we're delivering to our clients, these specifics make little difference to us. It doesn't matter to us if someone has a long or a more recent connection to local community. We engage with them simply as a young person with stuff going on. However, the fact that I can offer such statistics is evidence that we have proven to these young men and their families to be a culturally safe and welcoming space, and that our services and programs are trusted. It's in our DNA to meet young clients where they're at and support them from there. Menslink has a huge impact on women. Mike also mentioned 80% of our clients are from solo parent, mum families, desperate for support with their son, but often desperate for his behaviours to modify to allow for a more harmonious home life. We know our young guys' behaviours, struggles impact not only their parents but also their siblings, in particular sisters. Our work with young guys offers significant flow-on impacts for the females in their lives, both now and for the future. Young people need people, and despite much of our current world being online, which I acknowledge often makes for convenient service delivery, but I will struggle to be convinced that it negates the need nor the power of face-to-face interaction. And it's something that we're committed at Menslink, as we believe it allows a much stronger, authentic connection. Face-to-face service delivery needs to remain a priority. We offer wraparound support services for young guys. Our Menslink in School programs have a focus both on young men's mental health with our Silence is Deadly and mental fitness modules, as well as our 8-week small group positive behaviour Pride program, not targeted at naughty kids. Pre-COVID combined, we were reaching around 10,000 young men annually, and we're on track this year for the same. Our 2-year mentoring program for the 10 to 16-year-olds are currently supported by these amazing men, and I want to acknowledge them again, hopefully sitting beside one. Mentors turn up irrespective of what's happening in the young man's life, including some through court hearings and jail time. And of course, our long-standing counselling service targeting 10 to 25-year-olds. But in the 12 months I've been at Menslink, I've rattled off those age ranges a lot. But I really want to take time to consider who are these people that Menslink works with. So indulge me as I share who these young men are. It's the grade 5 to 6 young fella finishing primary school and daunted with a pending move to high school, especially after 2 years of COVID. It's the young men that just landed in high school or will next year. It's those with growth spurts and changes to their brain with impulses that neither they nor their parents understand. Those starting to feel bad about themselves, not good enough, anxious. Bedrooms became safe spaces during COVID, their own 21st century version of a cave with no need to leave except for food. Those enjoying the freedoms of college and battling with parents over boundaries. Those who've gone off the rails slightly and can't finish and fear disappointing those around them. Those deeply and privately grieving the loss of a girlfriend or partner, or indeed another family member. Those struggling through the breakdown of their family or friendship group. Those who have been victims of domestic violence throughout their short life and who now fear their own personal responses as they are maturing. New apprentices or graduates in a workplace, young dads, those struggling with addictions of all kinds, those struggling with a diagnosis, young men who don't feel they want to be here, young men who harm themselves and or others, those who are neurodiverse, those exploring their gender identity, and it's a long list and it's still underdone. These are the people we help. I'm sure if you reflect for a while, you'll see faces of young people in your families, children of your workmates, and those young men throughout your broader community that you may have need to engage with Menslink for a moment, a reason, or a season. And we need you to please storytell and weave the value of Menslink into conversations with them, as you never know when someone may need our support. And Menslink may just be the thing that the young fella needs as he tries to navigate, often alone, how to deal with his unfamiliar and unwanted emotions. I've just presented at a domestic violence conference where the need for more work in prevention, early intervention was reiterated. At Menslink, we have quietly been doing this for years, careful not to stigmatise for our young clients so they feel able and open to engage with our support. And this goes hand in hand with our mental health focus, with men's violence being an intersecting issue for many of our clients tussling with the cycle of violence they find themselves in. We challenge young guys in our school sessions where we discuss violence in all its forms. So Menslink is unique. There aren't other organisations delivering the range of service offerings designed specifically for young men that we offer. However, despite being in our 20th year and incredibly supported, thank you, and sustainable, we still don't have the capacity to reach all the young men that need our help. We want to take time together to work out how we can scale our trusted, cost-effective offering to reach more young men, including those who may not be in the school environment or those more inconvenient to reach. And less time and money trying to come up with shiny new approaches when something tried, true and targeted is right on our doorstep. It's important for young men to know they are accepted and valued for themselves, no matter what they look like, no matter what dialogue is going on inside that only they can hear, and no matter what they have done or fear doing. At Menslink, we don't judge, label, and the young men feel it in all that they experience. They trust us enough to work with us. Menslink is one of the most powerful mechanisms available in Canberra to deliver more in this space, as we have for the 20 years. So please talk to us about partnering to reach more young men with the work that we do. With an approach and a style trusted by young men in our community, it's an important conversation. We are keen to bring our specialist understanding gained working with young men for 2 decades to these discussions. So help us to continue to work across the spectrum of life's speed bumps for our community's young men. We promise to continue to be one of the reliable elders in their life that embraces, supports and guides them towards a more positive and productive life, no matter the stuff they've got going on when we first meet. Thank you.
I'd like to now introduce our keynote speaker for this year's Big Breakfast. Dr. Seidler is a clinical psychologist. He's the Director of Mental Health Training at Movember and a Senior Research Fellow with Orygen at the University of Melbourne. Zach's particular and urgently needed focus over the past few years has been reducing the staggering male suicide rate, treating and researching men's mental health. He's been published widely. He continues to work clinically with men of all ages and stages, from adolescents in Darwin with early psychosis to older HIV-positive men struggling with adjustment. Zach is a member of a number of national advisory bodies, including the Migration Council of Australia, the National Mental Health Commission and Suicide Prevention of Australia. He's appeared widely across the media nationally, sharing his specialist knowledge, and we will have some time at the end of the speech for your questions. So put your thinking caps on. I know this is a room where people care passionately about these issues, and this is tremendously expert advice. Please now warmly welcome Dr. Zach Seidler.
Good morning, everybody. Lovely to see everyone in person. How good is this? So it was Julia Gillard, Rosie Batty, so I'm either going to be Prime Minister or Australian of the Year by the end of this, which I'm looking forward to. I get a scream of approval. It's great. It's a good start. It's a great privilege to be with you all today. I won't sing like Jimmy Barnes either. It's a hard act to follow all of these people, but it is so incredibly important that you are all here today. The ACT and Canberra specifically obviously has such a strong community-focused foundation that I'm so privileged to be able to step in on today and watch how everyone comes together for such an important cause. I come to you from the Moustache Factory. It is literally written on my contract that if I can, I must grow a moustache. But it is not November, so I told them to just hold off for the moment. It's a global men's health charity. We began as a practical joke between 2 mates in a bar in Fitzroy in 2003, being like, where are the moustaches gone? And turns out that you can get a bit of traction with a practical joke amongst men. And we are now in 20 countries across the globe. We're the only global men's health charity in the world. And we have a very similar aim to that of Menslink, which is to help men live happier, healthier, longer lives. Over our 20-21 years, we've raised over $1 billion. And you know, we start from humble beginnings, and I was telling Penny last night that it's really important to continue to maintain that grassroots element to all organisations, and that's the thing that Menslink has done so well. So, I want to tell you a bit about my work. I'm an academic, horrible, I know, and a psychologist, don't worry, all is well. And I'm also a men's health advocate, and I have my own lived experience. I come to you with an understanding of the complexity of men, and I want to talk to you about that today through the lens of a story, because I was inspired by Penny to tell you a story, to really understand what we're here to talk about today. So, Come with me on a journey. It's a warm Sydney day late last year when, let's call him Sam, walks into my office. He's 6'2", and he's got a vice grip handshake that I joke with him would put Donald Trump to shame, although I think Donald Trump probably has a wet fish handshake, really. I've been in therapy with Sam for almost a month now, and I'm yet to get much more out of him than a few monosyllabic grunts. And I'm sure many of you, whether you're parents or otherwise, would know what that sounds like. Except if we're talking about surfing, which is something very close to my heart as a Bondi boy, and he loved surfing, and so we would always have that connection to share. But today something's different. Sam was averting my gaze, he looked exhausted, his right leg was shaking uncontrollably, and he was rubbing his hands together. For a guy that seemed unfazed by everything, suddenly he was a ball of nerves. I could feel the pressure in every word that he uttered. It was as if his life depended on it. He was standing on a literal precipice. I could see him physically fighting against everything that he had been taught, everything that had been reinforced in him as he stood in front of me. I waited, as any good psychologist knows how to do, and then the silence overwhelmed him and he began to weep. The dam of male feeling that runs through us all had broken in him, and there was no going back. Sam then slowly told me he had tried to kill himself the night before. He'd been feeling hopeless for as long as he could remember, but I was the first to hear about it. The privilege that was washing over me in that moment, I never take for granted. He cried because he desperately wanted to live, but he couldn't see a way to navigate through this pain while maintaining the mask that he had been come to rely on over time. You see, Sam had worked tirelessly for years at cultivating and tending to an image of resilience, one of silent stoicism. This was an image that he'd been sold by society. He thought he had everyone fooled, but it turned out that no one was even watching. It was not the fragility of Sam's masculinity that led him to attempt to take his own life. Rather, it was that he would not or could not admit and own this fragility. You see, despite what media taglines might have you believe, it is not fragile masculinity or toxic masculinity that is killing men. By suicide, in road rage-fueled accidents, high-speed car crashes, it's not what starts wars, fuels coward punches, or what catcalls women at night. It is the purposeful suppression of this innate fragility, the denial and outright avoidance that wreaks havoc on men, women, and our communities. You see, guys like Sam are afraid to be fragile or be vulnerable. So instead, they often resort to violence, risk-taking, and problematic substance use as ways to counteract that niggling feeling that they are in some way weak or flawed. Suddenly, the fact that men die on average 4 years younger than women in this country, and we lose 7 men a day to suicide, comes into sharp relief. But Sam's is a single story, replicated thousands of times every week in Australia. Masculinity is a problematic, anxious state, and I'm sure that any man who has grown up as a boy in this country can attest to that, whether it's on the footy field or elsewhere. It's hard won, and it's easily lost. Men like Sam are often in a destructive cycle because the more they deny their vulnerability, their pain, physical or psychological, the more uncertain and fragile they become, and the more intolerable this feels. When men's thoughts and feelings fester and remain unchallenged, stifled by fear often, they calcify. And what follows are the trigger-happy, often detached and confused behaviours that are flashed across our front pages. Masculinity has been sold to these men as a one-size-fits-all way of being, and over time has become a tool for suppression, repression, and now depression. Men are powerfully concerned about how they appear in others' eyes. 200 eyes or so, for instance. But we are those eyes. And it's about time we rebrand and embrace the fragile as beautiful, as strong, as intricate and complex, because that is what masculinity is. We only continue to be complicit in a weaponizing of the word masculinity, as all of you, I'm sure, have seen across the media, across YouTube, it doesn't matter where you go, when we describe morally vapid, unstable men as fragile. I'm privileged in my work to see the beauty and the beast of masculinity, the mateship and misogyny on full uncensored display that coalesce and contradict one another. It is this uncertainty about how to move through the world that we all feel, but the boys particularly feel, and that we need to promote. We need to help men navigate that road to self-awareness. We need to open up, not shut down, lines of communication early in these boys so that they know that they can admit that sometimes they've got no bloody idea what they're doing. They don't know why they made that joke, why they threw that punch, but we make clear that they can ask questions and that they won't be shamed for doing so, that there is a space and a place for them to question themselves. We won't strip them of their man cards. In fact, they might actually gain a few. We can avoid the restrictive stubbornness we see all too often in guys like Sam if we go out of this. And it's born out of fear that they've failed, that they haven't measured up. So, once Sam finally opened up to me, we began on the long road to recovery. Because once you admit that you're fragile, once you accept that we are all fragile, you realise that you deserve love, that you deserve care, self-compassion, to stop yourself from shattering. At the end of our time together, Sam gave me the suicide note that he had written that day. As so often happens, he asked me to share it with any other guys that sat in that same chair. When he left, I looked down and noticed on the back of the letter that Sam had scrawled in red ink, "Take off the mask. I promise you'll be able to breathe easier." Sam is thankfully still here, but plenty of men are not. If only they'd known and embraced how truly fragile they are, rather than expending endless energy railing against it. Many more boys could still have their fathers, wives, their husbands, and parents, their sons. It takes a village to bring up a man. And Menslink have been creating connection and community for young blokes across the ACT for 20 years. It's no small feat. We exist in a time where everybody is telling men what not to do, how not to be. But few are laying out a framework for what positive, healthy, respectful masculinity looks like. We need to stop assuming what men need and start asking. And that's where programs like Silence is Deadly and the Pride program, where they go into schools and teach young guys how and why they should speak up in times of need, to shift this status quo and create a generation of attuned, reflective and respectful guys. That means embracing difference, diversity, and not pandering to stereotypes that are frankly outdated and harmful. We need to be better salesmen. That's what I consider myself in many ways, just a used car salesman for masculinity. To find ways to sell this new version of modern day manhood, which is open, not rigid, respectful, not dominant, and altruistic at its core, not protective. That is something that all of you are obviously showing on display today. It's this altruism, it's this desire to help others. That's where the mentoring program comes from, that's where these counsellors come from. It's this desire to give back and trying to find that within yourself, because that is what gives us meaning, that is what gives us purpose, and that's what gets me up in the morning. Men express and experience masculinities in unique ways that consistently contradict and shift over time. Making space for these complex beings, checking in on our own biases, attitudes and beliefs when it comes to raising boys, and understanding that we have to actively be part of the solution here, not passively part of the problem. Men's health has for generations been a reactive response, waiting for the shit to hit the fan. We've all seen that. We've got enough first responders to understand what that looks like. We need to be proactive arming men with the tools, building communities that are competent and confident to respond to their needs, and fundamentally just expecting more of our young men. Because I can tell you, they're capable, they're ready, and they're raring to go. Whether it's youth unemployment, school dropout rates, mental health and substance abuse statistics, or juvenile justice, boys are outdoing themselves here. These are dire outcomes, and it isn't okay. It shouldn't be expected or excused. We have to start doing things differently. Much like Sam realised that his mode of expression wasn't working, Menslink are working tirelessly to offer opportunities for boys to work out who they want to be in this world and how to go about achieving their goals. So this isn't a sales pitch necessarily for Menslink, because you've all drunk the Kool-Aid, obviously. And I'm normally on stages espousing the virtues of itchy facial hair, which is a very strange job, I can tell you, going on Sunrise and talking about moustaches. But what I do find incredibly important about the work they do is this wraparound service. And this is the way that we should be working with men, women, children, it doesn't matter. It's understanding that there are not discrete moments where you check in. It is persistence. People always ask me, how should I look after my mate? How am I going to go about checking in on him? It's really uncomfortable. And I go, be relentless. Because he may say, nah, I'm fine right now. But if he knows that you are that person who is ready when the time is there, he will pick up the phone and give you a call. It's a game changer, what Menslink do with the mentoring and the counselling. And it's very specific to the ACT. And so holding this dearly and making sure that it continues to prosper and grow is really important. Let's not place endless responsibility on the shoulders of young blokes trying to work out how to navigate this thing we call life. But rather, let's smoothen the road for them, offer them supports and role modelling, create programs that entice them and help them grow. We must treat men delicately, tenderly, and with compassion. We should all model wearing our fragility with pride so that young guys growing up in the world don't see it as a marker of shame, but rather one that might just save their life. Thank you.
Zach, thank you so much. What a powerful message about embracing fragility. What a challenging and countercultural message. We do have time for some of your questions now. We've got two people in the room with microphones. We've got one down that end and one down that end. So I'll get you to just put your hand up if you'd like to ask a question, and just identify yourself as you, what organisation you're from. Do we have some questions in the room? I'm going to actually start with one, Zach, if that's okay. I'm sitting next to Wendy Cave, who's the head of the ACT Principals Association, and we've had a really fascinating conversation about gender and gender roles and school. The fact that there are a lot more men who are senior school principals, a lot more women who are junior school principals, and what if we flipped that? What if we had more men as role models in the younger years and more women as role models in the older years?
I reckon that we just blow up the system, to be honest. Talking about counterculture, that's kind of my way to go. Psychology, for instance, is 80% female, and we were discussing last night that it's not a matter of the fact that female principals, male psychologists, female psychologists can't attend to men's needs in equal ways. We just need more choice. We need more options. We need more visibility, fundamentally. And we were discussing how the notion of female mentors and female role models that are non-romantic, for instance, for young men, to be able to understand what respectful platonic relationships with an older woman, for instance, looks like is really, really important. And so having men who are going to be really close and not necessarily in those positions of power and who are going to have that sense of a flattened hierarchy with these young guys, because that's what works. And I'm sure that any of the mentors in the room would say, you don't come to them and go, I know fucking everything. This is how life goes. Fundamentally, the most important thing that needs to happen is that we need to, when we're talking about men's health, we need to go, okay, You cannot say that you have ridden the wave and that it's all over. And this is what parents do a lot of in some ways. They go, I was anxious as well when I was 16. And you talk about it retrospectively, rather than going, well, actually, I'm still struggling. And I can share that with you and we can walk through it together because I'm human and I may be 30 years older than you, but I don't have all the answers. And understanding that there's a reciprocity with young people as well and that we can live and learn from them and give and take in that cycle, I think is really important.
I'm just going to interpolate that the one and only lesson I would pass on to everyone after having raised 4 children is when you've got it wrong, say sorry. Do we have some questions from the floor? Yeah, I've got it. Todd, we'll get the microphone to you.
Thanks, Zach. A question for you, Zach. I just needed to let you know, Movember was my gateway drug to Menslink. I just needed to let you know that. I participated in Movember in 2004, and then, because I can grow a beard by lunchtime most days, and then I thought, all right, well, what can I do, and how do I continue? So Movember was where I started with Menslink. And a question for you, how do we... For young blokes, how do you remove the stigma around you're getting help, you're broken? How do we have that conversation with young blokes to not hide the fact that they're getting counselling and they don't have to lie to their mates, so I'm going for an appointment, or like, how do we make it cool to say I've got a mentor because they actually help me and it's good for me? What are some of the things that you can suggest or that you've suggested to some of your clients around that space?
Awesome question. As someone who shaved clean this morning and already has, it's an illness, don't I? So that's a really important question, and that's something that we do a lot of, both at Movember and in my own clinical work as well. It's leveraging masculinity to your advantage. So this idea that seeking help is weakness is done. Let's just not talk about it anymore, I think, because when we, as I said, we become complicit in reinforcing these stereotypes. So what I do is I flip it on its head and I go, what's the riskiest, most courageous, bravest thing that you can do right now? It's talk about what's going on in your head. It's finding that place. And so many young guys are all about performance. Yeah, that's where all of these YouTube videos and Instagram and TikTok videos are pushing them to be their best self. So what we try to do is, whenever I talk to a new client, I go, this might be uncomfortable for you. There's no doubt about that. But this is a place where you are going to not deal with your weakness. I am going to make you stronger. And so I turn it on its head and I go, this is an opportunity for growth. This is an opportunity to understand who you are and to crush it. And I make it really clear that it's within their grasp and it's not something to be ashamed of. And when they go out and they express that message to their mates, just watching that ripple effect is incredible. And so trying to never go in with that understanding that you think that they're going to be ashamed, because I think that they pick that up from us. So rather going in and being like, this is just the thing to do, guys. This is where it's at. They also, something that works really well is that all of the dating apps, if anyone is on them, you will notice that most of the women, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, are saying, I am looking for a man who goes to therapy. And so I make that really clear to the young guys that if they want to pick up, it is going to be very useful for them to understand their own emotional lives.
Sage advice. Do we have any other questions from the room? Yeah, I'll get the microphone to you down here. I think we've got the mic coming. Thanks, Corky. Just down the front here.
Thanks, Zach. I'd love your comments in relation to getting information, education out to the community, particularly to men. Not people necessarily who are mentors, but people who are just everyday people like we are in this room. And the message about what do we do when we actually see somebody in crisis. I mean, it sounds simple, but I'm sure there are a lot of people, and you would have experienced this, who have absolutely no idea how to approach, what to do when someone comes to you and says, I'm in crisis. Can you just help me in how that might be changed?
Definitely. So something that we do at Movember and is very core to our DNA is health by stealth. It's the Trojan horse of men's health. We come in with a moustache and then suddenly they're talking about prostate cancer. And so, very importantly, there are lots and lots of resources out there. It is inundating people, which is problematic. So I will always say Movember.com is the place to go for looking for resources. When it comes to conversations and how to go about this, we've created an online tool called Movember Conversations, which literally is a simulator for how to have conversations around grief, around a breakup, around you've just been diagnosed with something, and how to actually go, how do I begin this? Because it's very awkward, it's uncomfortable, you don't necessarily know what to say. I think that it is, within the person, I think it is very important to understand that there is never any harm in starting that conversation. Especially if we're talking about crisis, if we're talking about suicide crisis, lots of people don't know that saying that word doesn't trigger anything in a person. Asking them if they are suicidal is actually a protective factor. You are never going to implant that thought in anybody's mind. So make sure that if you are moving forward and having conversations with people who you are worried about, don't walk around it, because it actually opens them up when you say, I'm here and I'm willing to have this conversation. And it's okay. And most importantly, you are not there to solve the problem. And that's something that lots of guys, when they're helping out, whether mentoring or otherwise, struggle with, because you want to jump in, you want to get in the trenches and start digging. Importantly, if you're both in there, you're stuck. Yeah? So I go halfway down the ladder and I offer an arm. And that really takes listening and offering an understanding of what are the resources out there about how to encourage action. So obviously GPs are the gateway for lots of this stuff, so professional help is very important. But the likes of Menslink and otherwise, there are lots of informal supports that exist out there, and many guys prefer that to seeing someone like me, which is understandable and terrifying. And so really just trying to go for starting those conversations and just telling them that you're there, making clear that relentlessly so, that this conversation is something that you're willing to have. You'll be very surprised, as I said, with this story, that many of these guys, I see men who have been struggling with this stuff for 20, 30 years who have never said anything. And just the unloading, the unburdening of saying that is a solution in and of itself. Cheers.
Do we have other questions in the room? Yep, we've got one down there.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Biraj. I'm one of the counselors here at Menslink. Dr. Zach and I had a very brief chat before this program began. My question is very simple. You used the word masculinity many, many times. I was wondering, what is your idea or description of masculinity, and how would you navigate that with the men that you work with? I've had a lot of conversations about masculinity with so many different men, and everyone's given me a different answer. So how would you navigate that, and how would you describe masculinity for 2022?
Hoi. You've thrown me under the academic bus here. Okay. So, as I kind of spoke about, I actually don't say the word masculinity, I say masculinities. Anyone in this room who is a man or a woman who witnesses masculinities on display understands that you can easily go to the pub and have a VB with your mates and come home and cry to a Disney movie 10 minutes later. These things contradict each other, they coexist, they are complex, and I talk about flexible masculinity, I think, being the core construct here, which is that if you are a firefighter, a policeman, and you run into a crisis, you need to be stoic. Stoicism is fundamental to your own survival. But when you come out, you cannot continue with the same modus operandi. It doesn't work. You cannot be having this static masculinity across contexts. It's that rigidity that is so harmful. And so instead, it's going, all right, I needed that here, I don't need this now. For instance, if you're at work, if you're talking, whatever it may be, you're going to put on a certain version of yourself. And it's understanding that it's not fraudulent to have many different forms of masculinity, it's public or private. So when I'm working with my clients, as you said, how do we go about talking to it when they all have a different definition? That's the way. Allow them to very clearly pave the way for you, to show you what it means to them. Because if we impart our expert knowledge and go, no, that's not masculinity, this is masculinity, that's what has been so harmful. That's where this notion of toxic masculinity comes from, because it is putting it on men rather than allowing men to tell us what is meaningful to them. So that's just the fundamentals, I think, in many ways, of good communication, is to go, what's meaningful to you? What does this mean to you? And so many men, really, we've done surveys with thousands of guys, and we ask them what it means to be a man, and many of them don't have an answer. So that's where, in the therapeutic relationship, I really try to dig and navigate what is meaningful to you, what are your values? Rather than your traits, rather than these masculine traits which come and go, what are your values at your very core, and how can those be attached to your manhood? And understanding that that's not masculinity, that's much broader, that's your humanity. And knowing that we don't need to be constrained by these rigid gender norms that are handed down to us. Instead, once again, let's blow them up and then choose what you want and what is useful to you in any given context.
And I think we've got one final question down here.
Hi, my name's Nicole, and I'm just a mum with adult kids. And often in talking with parents who have adult kids who've gone through mental health, sometimes kids are brave enough, especially the boys, to go and get help the first time. But it's not always a chat that helps them. It's sometimes they have to get onto medication as well. And the struggle is always seeing young adult men getting on medication, but getting off it as soon as they feel better. And, it's this swing that they go on, they get on medication, get off it. What would you say? How can we encourage them or be persistent in one way without really, getting them to the other end where they don't take the medication at all?
Awesome. Firstly, you're not just a mother. Let's just start with that. Definitely not. So this is like a planted question. This is great. This is one of my gripes in life. And this is very important from an education perspective, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher. Medication is not an answer. It's often, and many of you would probably know, it's like putting a blanket over a fire, depending on the circumstance. And it is often sold as a one-trick way out of whatever is going on, a magic wand, if you will. That whole education piece needs to change. It has its place, there's no doubt about that. But the way that we talk about it means that they expect results very quickly from medication. And we know the evidence is very clear that having counselling along with medication is where you're going to get the best results. So what I often say to my clients, because I got a call actually yesterday from one of my clients who said, I'm not going to make the appointment today, I'm feeling really good. And I go, perfect, I'll see you at midday. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, I don't want to see you when you're depressed. Where do you get this idea that that's where the magic happens? You are going to get better because recovery begins when you're well. If you are depressed and I'm trying to respond to you, I have to get you out of bed. I have to get those core life capacities back for you, rather than when you're feeling really well, we need to prepare for when shit hits the fan. That's the way to do it. And so really upskilling these young people to understand that this journey has no beginning and end. And it's not a stigmatizing thing to understand that there is just the roller coaster of life. Because when we go on this and we go, oh, I'm feeling better, because then that sense of failure 3 months later, when you start to feel those things again and you go, why is this back? I thought I'd crushed it, I don't understand. Rather, continuing to go, this thing is something you're going to live with. It's something you're going to understand, and it's something you're going to turn into a superpower. I work with so many kids with ADHD, and they've been stigmatized for so long around what it means for them, rather than going, let's actually understand that this is something that you can use to your advantage. Yeah? You may not be the best at reading a book for an hour on end, but you might be one of these people who can jump around and manage lots of people and big projects and jump around with ideas. So talking about this journey as an ongoing one and something around self-development, rather than you've got your medication, you're feeling better, get off, you know. It's having these conversations and making sure that they're really clear on how this journey goes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been the beneficiaries of a great deal of warmth and wisdom, words I think many of us will take away about the importance of recognising fragility and flexibility and of masculinities. I'm going to take that idea away that there are many, many masculinities. Would you please thank Dr. Zach Seidler very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, as we close today, I also want to mention once again our sponsors for Menslink, the army of volunteers, the Menslink board and staff, everyone who works so hard every year to make this possible. Please acknowledge them. And just finally, a shameless plug for the CEO Walk, which is happening in November, where a bunch of us are going out walking to raise funds, and it's going to be, and I say this because I did it last year, bloody hard. So please go to the Menslink site, find out the walkers who are walking, support them warmly, support them generously, support them to fund the incredibly important work that Menslink does every year in this community. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time.